tying all these tracks and processes and requirements and components together is your governance aspect. Your governance is twofold. One, in the form of a platform. Do you have a privacy governance platform that allows you to provide all these functions, whether it's providing notice, collecting consent, fulfilling data subject rights, managing your incidents, whether it's third-party risk management, or your data mapping efforts, or your assessments, or your privacy impact assessments. A governance platform is essential to be able to base your privacy program on. The next aspect of governance comes your day-to-day operations. How are you collecting this information? How are you reporting? Who are you reporting it to? What is your cadence? Do you meet with your privacy working group or your privacy champions network on a set cadence? What are you communicating to them? How are you ensuring that changes in privacy laws and regulations are being relayed across to the organization? All of this comes down to having an operations team that is able to manage the day-to-day operations. Who's following up with your vendors? Who's making sure the privacy impact assessments are being completed on time? Who's identifying risks that are being popping up from your asset assessments, your PIAs, your third-party risk management assessments? Who's identifying the gaps in your retention enforcement? All this comes down to an operations team that is going to help the privacy office function in a fluid manner. How do you go about building your privacy program? Start with assembling the team. Either way, there should be a privacy officer or somebody leading the privacy effort. Then move on to your information security, your cybersecurity teams. You need a representative from that team to be able to partner with you. Moving on to your procurement teams, your marketing team, your human resources teams, your internal audit teams, eventually your technology teams. Representatives from the enterprise architecture team or even chief architects within the organization are absolutely essential to be part of this team. Once you have a team together, decide on a cadence to meet, whether it's once a month, whether it's once in 2 weeks. That cadence will allow you to discuss as a team what your next steps are going to be. The next obvious step from there could be to pick a privacy framework to adopt and follow. That framework will give you clear controls that you need to start implementing. Those controls can then be distributed within the team members for the implementation aspect. Once that's done, you can also then move forward to be able to identify which are the laws that you need to be mindful of. Those laws in conjunction with the framework that you're using will allow you to be able to build your implementation controls. You could then decide on a privacy governance platform. This platform is going to be the basis of your privacy program. That can also be something you decide ahead of time. Once the tool is in place and you have a privacy governance platform, it's time to get busy. This is when the day-to-day operations kick in. It can get overwhelming if you're wondering about where do I start? Do I start with all my assets? How do I make sure all my processing activities are in? How do I ensure all my vendors are assessed? I would recommend that you just start with 2 different aspects. Number one, think about all the processes that you feel have sensitive information or even personal information. That will automatically take you to certain departments. You'll think marketing, you'll think human resources. These are 2 good places to start because marketing collects customer information and interacts with the customer more often. So that is high risk. Then you can think about your order management processes. In the case of a retailer, you would think about your customer care processes. Identify 1 or 2 key processes that you feel have a lot of personal information. If you have international operations, anything that has cross-border transfers, those become candidates for you. Ask your privacy champions to identify their top 5 processes that could have privacy risk. Another way to look at it is any new vendor coming on board, ensure that if business is bringing on a new vendor, conduct a privacy impact assessment on the process for which the vendor is supporting the company with. When that PIA is done, ask some basic questions about the vendor. Why do we need this vendor? Is it a SaaS platform? Is it an on-premise installation? Use that as the basis to then issue assessments, your vendor security assessment, your vendor privacy assessment to your vendors. Get your third party to respond to those assessments, assess the risks that coming out of those assessments. Then that becomes the basis for you to add clauses into your data processing addendum, or even if you need to have a data processing addendum. Identify where that data is being shared. Are they using subcontractors? Those aspects kick in. Once you have that on the vendors, and every time you're bringing on a new vendor, this process ensures you get at least 1 processing activity completed along with the vendor onboarding. The other aspect when it comes to vendors is on renewal. When you're renewing the contract with the vendor, even if it's just a time-based renewal with no changes to the processes, onboard them into your privacy governance platform, issue their vendor security, vendor privacy assessment, depending on a threshold assessment that qualifies the vendor to be assessed for privacy risk. That alone allows you to be able to create a fairly good volume of vendor and third-party risk management practices. Now that we have a way of identifying third-party risk through those assessments and the processing activity that you've just executed, you will identify other processes or other application systems, assets within the organization. That takes you down a concept of what is called the data map backlog. This is a backlog of your records, your applications, your processing activities, your vendors. These have been related. So your privacy governance tool allows you to be able to build that relationship between these records, whether they're applications, processes, or vendors. Once you have these records built, and then you identify a set of records that have got potential privacy risk, but they have not been assessed, that becomes your backlog. Then the discipline of taking the most risk-sensitive items off that backlog and conducting those assessments, whether they are asset or application assessments, whether they are processing activity or PIAs, or whether they are vendor. You could do vendors based on new vendors coming on board, renewals that are happening, or you could even identify sensitive vendors with whom you know you're sharing sensitive PI. Think healthcare vendors, your background check vendors, your payroll processing vendors. Conduct PIAs and eventually do vendor security and privacy assessments with these vendors so that you can actually complete the contractual obligations that have not been done so far. These would be done under the head of look-back vendors. Once you have a cadence of running frequent assessments, that process of identifying risks then adds to your risk register. You can now build an enterprise risk register within your privacy governance platform, or you could even feed it into the cybersecurity or the information security system that is being used to currently track and manage enterprise risk. Forms a basis of identifying key business owners and key departments or portfolios that keep popping up with respect to risk, only because of the nature of data that they're processing. That allows you to then start honing in on specific departments and specific processes or systems or vendors around whom you want to tighten your risk profile. Once that's done, the next area for you to focus on is governance on your cookie compliance, your mobile app compliance. These are areas that require constant surveillance because of the fact that when you're dealing with cookies and you're working with advertisers and you're involved in the whole publisher subscriber setup with real-time bidding, you have new vendors popping up all the time and you hence have new cookies dropping. You need to have a cadence or a governance process, we call it cookie governance, which is run on a quarterly basis where you're looking for new cookies that have been dropped on the website that have been identified. They need to be classified or categorized, and then you need to make sure that your tag management solution, or if they're being called directly from the scripts, that these cookies are actually listening. That cookie governance process is a repetitive process. It's never a once and done. You have to get into a cadence of monitoring your cookies, or at some point, there's going to be a whole bunch of cookies that are just not listening to user compliance or consent because they have not been set up accordingly to be able to take that consent into consideration before they are being dropped. Through the assessments, you build a volume of records, whether it's assets, vendors, processing activities that are dealing with PI or not. But the ones that are dealing with PI, you're also keeping track of what PI is being dealt with. Then you can look back on your notice and you can see if your notice is reflecting the information that you've collected across all these assessments that you've been done. It might take 3 to 6 months, but that regular cadence of reviewing the notice based on information gathered within your privacy governance platform ensures that your notice is current with your business practices and your technical advancements. Another aspect to keep in mind is your internal audit team is also running audits on multiple compliance aspects. Have them work with you on the privacy framework that you've identified. So they will then have specific controls that they will start checking for in their audit procedures as well. This also gives you another layer of protection where you're constantly seeking for risk evaluations. The training and awareness keeps people aware of it, but internal audit then is able to say, where are the evidences of these controls that we are following as far as the privacy framework is concerned? All of these components together require a lot of work. Most privacy offices or compliance teams are strapped for bandwidth purely because the volume is so high. Every interaction with a customer, every data point collected, shared, processed, stored needs to be assessed. This is hard. This is where we step in. We come in with a team that is privacy aware, technically aware. We are aware of the privacy governance platforms available out there. we're able to build that program engine to keep running the follow-ups, the follow-throughs that are needed, making sure that new laws are being incorporated. You will have to keep updating your data subject rights fulfillment intake process, your workflow process. Your new vendors coming in need to be informed about delete requests that are coming in. All this is a constant churn, and hence having a standard process involved with the privacy program and building a guide indicating exactly what's happening, when, where, why, how, by whom, all that is something that we can help with as well.